Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk about some big subjects today.
Thank you for coming and discussing these big, emotive nouns with us. I wondered what your first experience of shock was.
So I think my first experience of shock was probably when I was around 11. When you're a child, you don't really think too much about your body and how you look because you're too busy having fun and playing and all of that kind of stuff. But when I started secondary school, that was when it really hit me that my body was very different from all of the other girls. And I remember when I was, we were changing for PE and I felt this overwhelming sense of my body doesn't look the same as everybody else's, and I've got a few more rolls here and there, and for like 20 minutes I was just staring at everybody else. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I needed to change in order to kind of fit in with the rest of the girls in school, and for me, I think that was one of the first times that I realised that I felt very different from everybody else, and it was a bit of a shock to me because the world kind of turned upside down, and then that's when I started to get feelings of like shame and depression and all of these things because I felt less than basically, and so yeah, that was a huge moment for me.
Where did denial come into your story?
So for me, it was very much a case of I just didn't want to exist in this body. I felt like looking this way brought nothing but pain and disappointment and shame and rejection. Also kind of having to live up to expectations and family as well, because I was getting flack about how I looked from certain members of my family, and I think their way of trying to motivate me to lose weight was coming from a shame aspect. So it would be things like we'll be all eating dinner and I'll have my plate snatched off me, and embarrassing me in public in front of like family friends and things about my weight, and I'm sure they thought that it was coming from a place of love, but really it further initiated the self-hatred that I started to feel about my body. And I guess the self-hate part of it does come into denial because I just didn't want to exist in this shell. On top of that, I didn't see much representation on TV or in the movies of women that looked like me. And when I did see representation, it was mostly women who were either cast as the comedic best friends who find it difficult to find their own love and relationships, or they're mostly cast as not being all that bright, or they're mostly subservient. So it's mostly roles, such as servants and maids and all of these things. I never saw any sort of black plus size women being strong and confident and being quote unquote normal and having successful jobs and living their lives. And so for me as a 15, 16-year-old, it told me that being plus size and being black, maybe we weren't worthy of these roles or these occupations or of these ways of living because the media didn't see us as beautiful. So that kind of took a turn into doing lots of dieting and being put on diet plans from the age of 13 or so. That kind of really helped create a sort of almost like an eating disorder because I would restrict myself to like 600 to 800 calories a day. And for me, I thought that was me doing a good thing because people assume that fat people can't have eating disorders, but we can. It's just that you can't see it. And so when people gradually see you losing weight, they think, oh, you're doing such a good thing.
You're encouraged.
And you're encouraged.
Rather than going, you're enough, you're beautiful, do not abuse your body.
Exactly. So not knowing that, there are people who are throwing up and people having, diet pills and laxatives and all of these other really dangerous things that I did in order to lose weight. Me going on that path, that destructive path of trying to lose weight was definitely a way of me denying my current self and, all of the great things that I have to offer in order to achieve this body ideal that ultimately doesn't really exist.
So moving on to fear, what does it mean to you? How have you dealt with fear in your life?
My fear definitely started when I was 14. I was bullied from year 7 to year 11. And in year 8 specifically is when it was really bad, to the point where I was too scared to go to school. There was a group of guys in the year above and in my year who would beat me up all the time. There would be times before class when we had to line up outside class, and some of the bullies would come and just like strangle me for no reason in front of everyone. There was an occasion when I had acid thrown at me on the back of my neck in science, and people just laughed. They stood there and laughed, and them laughing and not doing anything made me feel like as if I deserved it, because I thought, you know, if this happened to anybody else, somebody would step in and say, no, that isn't right, or leave that person alone. But them not saying anything kind of reinforced the fact that maybe I deserved it because of how I looked. And so, yeah, there have been loads of broken bones and just really horrific kind of physical abuse at the hands of these boys. And I remember when I was 15, I told my dad for the first time that I was getting bullied. And his response was, well, maybe if you lost weight, you wouldn't get bullied. And so after hearing that, that further kind of cemented the fact that, okay, so I am the reason why
it's my fault.
all of these things are happening. And the fear combated with this sort of deep depression it was like a bit of a living hell. It was horrible.
I mean, the complicity as well of not only the bullies, but no one else in the class, and then your family telling you, well, yeah, if you lost weight, no one's gone, hey, no, this is wrong. You've been misinformed. You're beautiful and brilliant.
Yeah, I didn't have anybody around me actually thinking about it. And I think that's why probably I'm so independent now, is that I just didn't have people to rely on for support. So I had to be there for myself. There were a lot of times when I didn't want to be here, and there are a lot of times when I made decisions and plans to not be here. But then I just thought, well, I'm the only person that has to look out for me. So if that's the case, I'm just gonna try and make the best of a bad situation and just trudge on.
And now look at it, you're about to publish a book. So
yes.
you could tell your 15-year-old self that, imagine.
I don't even think she'll believe it. She'll be like, what are you talking about? Like, no.
If she asked me how I feel about the pictures being out there, the answer isn't fine, is it?
Of course the answer's not fine, because you're disappointed. You shouldn't be ashamed, is what's important. You should just be honest.
But I am ashamed.
Why? So growing up, did you have a sense of shame about who you were? Or if you had a feeling of shame, where did it come from?
So I think there were two aspects of shame for me. One was definitely how I looked like. But funnily enough as well, back then, there was almost a shame of like being African and being West African, because in primary and secondary school we were picked on all the time, and lots of, you know, racist insults, and people would absolutely murder my surname, and people would say that we live in huts and call us monkeys and all of these things. And so a part of my family on my mum's side they have Portuguese in there, and so I remember like for the longest time in secondary school, whenever somebody would ask me where I'm from, I'd be like, I'm from Ghana, but I've got like a lot of Portuguese in me as well.
God.
And I'm just
trying
like,
to temper the Ghanaian with the Portuguese somehow. No, but I understand that. I used to tell people I was Italian because I didn't want to be Iranian. Yeah, because I just thought people would accept it more.
Yeah, that was a definite thing that I used to be really wary of growing up. But as I became older, it kind of like funneled off. But the feelings of shame regarding how I looked, that was a huge one. And I remember shortly before my 23rd birthday, I had decided that I wanted to go to Barcelona to go and stay with my uncle just as a birthday trip. At that point, I'd never been to the beach because I was like too nervous and insecure. And I said to myself, okay, so my birthday's in this month. I've got 4 months to lose about 4 or 5 stone. Because I want to wear a bikini on the beach, because that's what people do. And in order to wear a bikini, you need a bikini body. And so I, again, undertook very, very dangerous methods of losing weight. I fasted. I was taking laxatives and suppressants. I was joining these weight loss clubs where you can't eat physical food for like 3 months, and you have to survive on shakes that they give you and bars. And in the end, I ended up losing, I think, about 4 stone. And I went to Barcelona, and I had the worst time ever. I had the worst time because every day I would look in the mirror in this bikini that I'd worked so hard to, you know, lose. And I was like, okay, but there's loose skin here and it's saggy here and I need to get rid of this and this and this. And at that point, because of the extreme ways in which I was dieting, my body had taken its toll. So I was starting to get like stomach issues and like my throat was hurting a lot and my skin looked really bad. And I remember at that point when it was the day before I was leaving, and I just looked at myself and I was like, my mental health is in the worst place it's ever been, because all I can now think about is doing more and not thinking that I'm enough. And I thought to myself, I've done such horrible things to my body and I've put it through so much, but yet it's still here keeping me alive. And it was that moment that I was like, wow, I actually need to see my body as its own person and apologize to it, because I've just treated it like rubbish. And you know, it could have given up any time or just decided to like rebel or something, but I'm still here. I've still got my health despite everything I've done. And I think that was the moment for me that I decided to actively try and do something about learning how to love myself.
And the shame was born out of not conforming to a skinny, white thing that was created by the media for us to all adhere to, that
Exactly.
it just doesn't, it's not one size fits all. It doesn't work.
It was all, you know, if you're not small or athletic and white, then it's like you don't exist or you don't matter. And there was a period of time from the age of like 16 where I did actually start tampering with bleach and trying to bleach my skin. As kids, especially when you're from an ethnic background, you're almost taught to kind of have this shame about how you look, especially when it comes to skin colour, because we've always been taught to aspire, I think, to whiteness as being the goal. I think that's why in certain ethnicities, like skin bleaching is seen as normal, very, very normal.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've always had to bargain in a way to be accepted.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my whole life up until like the last 5 or 6 years has been constant bargaining with myself. If I do this, if I reduce my weight, if I'm lighter, then maybe these people will like me or this guy will like me. You know, me wearing things that I didn't feel comfortable in order to make others feel better. So for me, it was like I lived in just wearing black all the time and big smock dresses and, you know, shapeless things, because I thought if I kind of blend into the background, then people won't really take notice of me. And I had such a huge problem with eye contact when I was younger. I couldn't look people in the eye.
Really?
Yeah, because I hated myself so much and I didn't want people to look at me and see the ugliness. I had such a huge problem with that and speaking in public and all of these things I tried to not do because I didn't want to draw attention to myself, even though there was this part of me inside that was so creative and, you know, wanted to be on stage and wanted to sing and act and write and all of these things. There was the other part of me that was just like, no, you're not ready to do that. You're not going to do that because you still look like this. And until you get to a point where you don't look like this, then you're not qualified or eligible. And now I know that that is all absolute rubbish, because we have people like the incredible Lizzo, who is like my icon. She's literally doing everything that I thought I wanted to do when I was younger. And so I know that we can do whatever we put our minds to, and that it shouldn't matter how much you weigh. Or...
Do you still want to sing and act?
Yeah, definitely. One day. Sometimes when I'm alone, I do tend to belt out like a little Hamilton tune or so.
Yeah, don't we all? Do you feel guilty about the way you treated yourself?
I do. I feel, I mean, the way that I treated myself was disgusting. And I always say to myself, you know, I wouldn't treat another human being the way I treated myself. And I think, you know, all of us have that kind of thing where, you know that you would never speak to other people the way we speak to ourselves, but at the time, you kind of just feel like you can cope with it. It's taken a very long time for me to kind of establish my personality and all of the, I guess, great things about me. And I just wish that I could, you know, go back and tell, you know, 14, 15-year-old Steph that, you know, it's going to get so much better. Like, stop treating yourself like this.
Did anger play a part in things that have happened to you?
Definitely growing up alongside I guess, all of the insecurities and the low self-confidence, there was an anger. I remember even like being angry towards like my dad. And I would just hate that I took after my dad's side of the family. I was born with a gap between my teeth. And that is a trait that is very well known in my dad's side of the family. And I was born with one and I closed it as soon as I went to university. I never smiled because I hated showing the gap. It was quite a large gap and I just felt it added to the ugliness of me. And I remember closing it and then I went home to see my dad and I smiled and he didn't cry, but he just stared really sadly. And he was like, "Why did you close it?" And I was just like, I just didn't feel comfortable. And he was like, because in Ghana, having a gap is a sign of beauty. And I remember like a few months after I closed it, I was like, I didn't wish for it back, but I just felt sad that I'd gone to those measures to do it. You know, growing up and, you know, going to therapy and stuff, I had to like unlearn all of that and, you know, realize that I'd taken the best parts of like my mom and my dad and all of these things. So there was a lot of anger there. There was just a lot of anger in general towards my body and myself and, you know, just mad that I couldn't live the life and have the friends and have the social life that I wanted.
Do you ever think that your unapologeticness and your accepting now who you are and your modelling and you're just being in the public eye has made people angry?
Oh, yes. Just existing in this body makes people very angry. That is a thing that people, society in general, are not used to seeing. They're not used to seeing fat women love themselves and, you know, have respect for themselves and have standards and wear things that we've probably been told not to wear. So for me, especially being quite active on social media, it's just a breeding ground for trolls because they, you know, if I take a picture of myself wearing like a bikini, for instance, it's just like, that's grotesque, that's horrible, why are you wearing that? Literally just existing in this body, being fat, black, with an afro, it's like I'm being political and I don't even know it because it's like I'm defying what society thinks plus size people should be and should look like. And, you know, people want us to be insecure and small and...
The person you described wearing all black and fading into the background.
Wearing all black, yeah. And now that we're at a point where we are seeing plus size people love themselves loudly and take up space, I feel like it scares some people because you do have people that are smaller, people that are in thinner bodies who have very low confidence for whatever reason. So when they see somebody who is fat, who loves themselves, they get angry because it's like,
destabilized somehow.
Yeah, it's like, I look better than you. How comes I'm not at that level of confidence? How dare you have more confidence than me looking the way you do? They normally tend to go either one of two routes. They will either be very overtly mean and rude and trolly, or they will go the softer route, which is the fat shaming, which is the health concern. So they'll say something like, you really should, you know, lose weight because I'm concerned about this and this, when in reality, when we kind of think about it, nobody really cares about the health of anybody else. It's more a case of the way you look, and because you can see us physically and how we look, people will use that as a way to be mean, but they'll use health as like a guise for their fat phobia. But yeah, people they're mad about it, and that's their own personal problem. It's got nothing to do with me.
When did you feel like you accepted yourself?
Because of, I think, the nature or the topic I was talking about, I would often see on my timeline as I'd be scrolling loads of content regarding bodies in general. And I started seeing lots of plus size bodies scrolling up. And I'd be like, why is this plus size person on my feed? Like, that's not what I want to look like. But then it started happening a lot more. And what I did was I would click into the hashtags that they would use. And the hashtags that were being used was body positivity. And I remember just clicking onto the hashtag and seeing all of this content. It was photos, videos, poems of people just celebrating themselves. And I was like, wait, this is like a whole new world for me. I remember just scrolling through and seeing all of these images of women who looked exactly like me, who were celebrating their bodies and writing these beautiful essays to accompany their self-love journeys. And for me, I think it was definitely feeling that I wasn't alone. So seeing those images of other women who were like scantily clad as well, so wearing like lingerie or swimsuits, or just like, you know, sleeveless tops and things, it made me think, oh wow, so I'm not the only one that is shaped like this. And also there are these women that are publicly putting themselves on a platform and loving themselves loudly. I need to be like that. And for me, that was it. When I came across that hashtag, it was like a deep dive into this whole new world of acceptance and people accepting themselves and being unapologetic and happy. And I wanted a piece of that, because at that time I was so tired of being locked in this cage of low confidence and insecurity. And so it was such a freeing moment for me when I stumbled upon the body positive movement. And I remember I thought, I'm gonna do a fashion post of what I wore today. And I remember putting a dress on for the first time and taking a few pictures of myself. And then I went away from my computer and then came back in the evening, because I was like, oh, there's gonna be trolls and people saying I look disgusting, but it was all positive. And I remember I just cried, because I was like, are people really seeing this and saying positive things? And so it inspired me to start posting more photos of myself and like expressing myself through fashion. And that was, for me, was really the beginning of this journey that I have been on and will continue to be on. Yeah, I think 2013 was the year that I really began to change how I saw myself and perceived myself, and actually started to live for me instead of living for other people.
So, Stephanie, you're now a role model, which is incredible and it's wonderful. And I just wanted to know what you want people watching and listening to you to take from your journey.
Just to know that it's okay to have issues with your body, because we all do, we're all human, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the story. This journey to self-love, again, is difficult and non-linear, but the freedom that you get when you get to that point where you just don't care about others' opinions is amazing. And for me, growing up, I never thought I would be in this position. And so I really want people to understand that you can honestly do whatever you put your mind to. Don't ever let your body or your upbringing or your race or sexuality ever hold you back from doing what it is you were meant to do, because there is room at the table for all of us to go down our separate chosen paths, and living your truth and be unapologetic and take up space wherever you can. Take up space.
Take up space. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Thank you.